in this seminar, we're going to be talking a lot about security. With Eric, he is not only our CEO, but he is our lead guru of all things IT. And so he's going to be leading the majority of the conversation. My brain works more operationally than technically, so I'll be trying to fill in some questions or comments when I feel like it might need a bridge between technical language and what I just generally tell people that I have the normal brain. I work in operational and business type conversation. I'm not the greatest at technical lingo, so I'll try to help bring in some questions when it comes to things like that. If you want to look at any of our past webinars, you can go onto our website and go onto the blogs page. And it not only has blogs that we've written, but it also has all of our webinars that we've done. We started the webinars back in, I want to say the end of March, maybe possibly beginning of April. The beginning of them, the first 4 dealt with just getting remote workforce set up, and it dealt with the resources that you would need to do that and things to consider. And then we've been kind of going on from then once a month to talk about other things. This one, again, we're going to be talking a little bit about security.
Ooh.
Our next webinar is we try to do them we do them, we don't try, we do them the 3rd Thursday of the month. So the next one is July 16th, and we're going to be talking about IT budgeting. And it's going to be kind of interpret it as you go, but we have seen, and we're going to show you some data about people that budget a certain way and it giving them some strategic advantage into reaching their goals. And so we'll be talking about what if your goals may be and how we can help you achieve those financially, really just looking at your finances and how you can assess that.
Yeah, to elaborate, I think I can draw a pretty good correlation between spending money on IT and having a high IT performance. I'm kind of going through a lot of the data that we have, and I can show some high performers and low performers and talk about how they treat IT differently, and just to kind of help make that part, that correlation between what's important, what's not important. So I'm pretty excited about it. So yeah.
And like I said before, if you have any questions or comments, put them down in the chat or into the question and answer actual page, and we'll get to them as we can. If we can't get to them, or if it seems very specific, we'll reach out to you directly after this webinar is over.
So here we go. This is where I get to have fun. So security, what's the next step, right? I know everybody's been talking about security, it seems like forever, but we feel like this transition is kind of reopening up that box and kind of offering opportunity to say, what does it really mean to be secure and what are the next steps of security? And we see so many people who haven't added security, who haven't added additional security. The basic stuff, the lock and key is no longer enough. We have to keep going. And that's what we're going to look to start beginning to talk about today in kind of some of what we're seeing and what we want to share with everybody about security. And this is why we feel like it's important, why we're adding this to a quick topic, because we're seeing an increase. We're seeing, even just in our own customers, we're seeing a spike in attacks, in malware, in these guys being super creative in trying to get into your environment, to get into your network. I've got a couple different ones here, and I hope you're getting a chance to read it. I don't want to read it all out. It feels redundant, but, seeing this increase, seeing this surge. And, I don't know, I know if you're listening to my past webinars, holidays, every holiday I see people try to get attacked, or I've seen attacks happen on holidays. And I feel like that's because people are low staffed or not in the office, or, working from home or checking email on their phones. The bad guys know that something has changed, and they're trying to use that as leverage. They're trying to use that as their advantage, because that makes their job easier. When I say job, it's a job. That we'll get in that another next webinars about the business of bad guys, the business of phishing and malware and stuff. But back in 2009, when we were kind of going through a recession, there was a surge of attacks then too. So it's not like this is new news. Like, it happened back then. I know what's going to happen now. I see it happening now, and we want to get this out in front of everybody, because it's not too late. It's time to double down on some security and add up some walls for you guys and your networks and your businesses. So this is a slide we like to use a lot, right? For years, your basic security was antivirus, and a backup that was geo-redundant. Working our way up from the bottom, you got dark web monitoring. It's very easy. Kind of lets you know when the bad guys are looking at you. You got your DNS scanning and filtering. That's kind of like a next tier antivirus. It's kind of the known list of baddies is the way I describe it. Geo filtering is strictly saying, hey, I don't do business with China, so why do I need to? Why does China have access to me? We just turn off countries with geo filtering. Some businesses it's very easy to do that, others is not, but it's a super powerful tool. Just straight up, the ability to limit a whole country from accessing your network is too easy. One of the largest ones, and the one we're going to talk about today, is phishing and security awareness training. I'm very passionate about this. I've seen it have tremendous results on networks, and I've seen it myself. It's the way people are trying to get in. It's the way the bad guys are doing their job, doing their business. So, and then you have your active security above that. We have threat hunting tools, and that's tools where they're actively not looking for heuristically scanning. They're looking for things actively in your network. Then we have next gen antivirus. To the point where these guys are offering $1,000 per PC guarantee if you have something happen. They're really serious about it. And then you have your SIM, which is your security and analytics. It's a team of people that are looking at just logs, and they use artificial intelligence to say, hey, this is new traffic today. Why is this traffic new? So that, it's beyond what we've installed. So, somebody drops a piece of a device in your equipment that your IT guy hasn't had time to onboard. Tools like those catch it. They see that stuff happening before it, gets nasty.
So that's a lot of security words that might be the first time that people are ever hearing those. When it comes to what people generally have, or what can we use some words to what these generally are? Like what are Norton antivirus? Like where does that line up in?
So most people have what we call basic security. I mean, for a long time, having good backups and a firewall antivirus was great. That was enough. Those days are gone. Those days are over. If that's all you have for security, we need to have conversations. I can give you a lot of good ideas and advice, and we need to be adding some layers. So everybody, I'd say, just about has antivirus and backup, although I've come into some networks that don't have it, or that's out of date or not patched or not updated. But everybody, and there's a lot of other layers. I mean, I'm not even talking about Windows updates is in this. Having a good firewall is in this list. This is kind of trying to be holistic and giving people a place to benchmark. And there's guides out there published by the government and security firms, and they'll have 400 is what we would call like checkpoints, right? But we feel like, and others have kind of said, covering these gets you to about the 95% mark. Going beyond that gets very cost prohibitive, very costly, and very impactful to work. And the ROI to most business owners is just not there. You doing these things that kind of we have listed here definitely makes you one of the hardest targets on the internet. So the bad guys go somewhere else.
And what has the hierarchy on here where you have like dark web monitoring going? Why is that just like that next step right above antivirus?
It's ease. Oh, I kind of, when I made this list, not only did I want to include impact on your network, but also ease of deployment and impact to the network and your environment. The bottom three things anyone can do without really affecting their network or their workflows. They're literally tools that can get enabled. They're very cost effective in most cases, very low cost from the labor standpoint and the product standpoint. So it was they're easy and they have a large coverage. They quickly add a blanket. Now I do show them thinner for a reason. They're smaller blankets at which they cover, right? But then you get to phishing, and that's a huge blanket, and but it's a little more costly. It requires testing your employees, so your employees are going to have to spend time. They're going to, there's not just a cost of buying the software. There's a cost of your employees doing the training and doing those things. So it gets more intense. Now, as you go up the other layers, some of those layers require physical hardware on site, and they get quite, they can get costly, and they're time consuming, and like threat hunting and next gen and SIM, your users will not notice any of that stuff, but I can't just turn that on tomorrow. That stuff has to be built into the network. A lot of networks, it's just a matter of putting what we call a collector on site to collect logs. But it was basically me trying to show ease of deployment and then bang for buck by the size, right? So the bottom ones are easier to deploy. They get harder to deploy at the top, but they have a more, they control your network even more. if I was going into anyone, I would say, and we do talk about this, you look at it in two halves. The bottom from phishing down is super easy and super, that's like, I want everybody to have that. Now, if you have additional money in your spend or you're high security, high compliance, the top three are where you need to go. So the bottom three is the bottom half, not three, the bottom five, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is what I want to say the new minimum is. Back in the day, antivirus and backup geo redundant was the minimum. I want to bring that minimum up. I feel like every business needs to be phishing and down. And then the top three are your people who want to go above and beyond with security. So there's a lot of things happening, I guess. Oh, where do we start, right? There's a lot of things here. Most people don't have an additional budget, made for this, or if they have a budget at all, right? So we're having to go collect money because no matter what, everything costs money, right? Like I said, it can cost money to deploy the product, training time, staff time, equipment, whatever, right? So we need a place to start. Well, bang for your buck wise, and right now matching up to the current threat landscape, phishing and security awareness training is definitely huge, right? Geofiltering, DNS scanning, dark web, those are easy. You can normally deploy those very inexpensively in a network, but they're not going to have as big as a bang for the buck as phishing and security, particularly because that one is where the bad guys are getting in. All those other things try to stop a phishing attack, but after it's happened. Whereas if we can train the employee, we can stop the attack before it gets into our network. So I like that, and I want to talk about that today because it's not as straightforward as the other tools. We need the user's help. It's definitely more evasive in the customer's operating, time and their processes. So it requires the most conversation, in my opinion. Some data, where we're getting this information from. I want to focus here. If you look, let me point for you guys, but employee actions, they're 50% of the breaches, and then business, 53 down here by the local business makers, right? Like internal people. So they agree that the information security leaders and you guys, us, we think that 53% of our hacks or intrusions happen because of our employees. And then third party actions, well, I feel like both of those are basically phishing attacks, right? It's, the bad people doing something to get inside of our network. So the bad person is sent an email, an employee clicks it. And I feel like that's these 4 boxes here on the left. And the rest of the stuff is smaller things, right? It's not as much. And that's why I like to focus on the phishing. It's such a big chunk of how they're getting in. I feel like it has a big reason to be talked about. And this is a little slide we pulled from one of our vendors, according to their research and their data, right? We have 91% of successful data breaches starting with a spear phishing attack. And I'd agree. Not always are they, trying to get you to send money to a different bank account, but maybe trying to get you to click on an email that silently deploys something in your network, giving them access to everything. Thinking back to my history, every time I feel like we've been able to track down something bad, I'd say out of the few we've had, all of them have been from somebody clicking on something, right? They don't get in through your firewall. They get in through an email, or they get in because of the employee, because that's the hardest thing for us to secure is the employee, so I'd agree with that, CEO fraud, that number 26 billion in damage. I don't know. It's a good, I think big thing take, it's expensive. It's ridiculously expensive. The damage can be not just monetarily, but to your brand, to your customer, to your customers' lives can be affected by this stuff. So it's why it's so serious. I don't know how they can go at 26 billion. I feel like there's no way to track that number, but it's a lot for sure. 34% of businesses hit with malware take a week or more to regain. That's possible, right? I know of hospitals that got attacked, and for 5-6 days they had nothing. And it could be a patient's life if the doctors can't prescribe the right medicines or whatever, right? It's super serious. There's things you can do. It is not impossible, right? And there's things we have to do. And then the last point there, 75% of companies infected are running up-to-date endpoint. That's antivirus. When they say endpoint protection, they're talking about antivirus. It really is these days, your traditional antivirus is doing a it's looking at the file and then checking that against the list of known bad files. So all the bad guys got to do is change one little thing about the file, and then the antivirus doesn't see it's bad. So all they did was write the software to change itself every time it deploys, so the antivirus never can catch it. So the days of saying I have antivirus and we're covered, it's just over. So I want to show some of the things I look for when evaluating a training in testing, in analytics of a phishing tool, right? It's a lot more than just sending emails to employees and trying to get them to click on it, right? It's a whole lot more. You know, if we don't have the data behind it, how do we know how we're doing? And how do we know what things our users are clicking on? Because there's multiple different types of phishing attacks. You know, are they just trying to get you to give credentials? Are they trying to get you to download a file, right? And our employees need our help. They don't know. They don't understand the risk, and they definitely don't see it as important as we do. So we got to help make it to where it's part of their daily life, making sure this is a legitimate thing that I'm doing when it relates to my IT. So I like this analogy of a circle, right? Because first we're going to train them, and I do recommend new hire training. I recommend, new employee training, startup training. Then we're going to test them. And, my most successful organizations test once a month, twice a month, and they randomize it. And they don't ask us to tell them anything, because we do not need the HR department telling all of HR the test is about to come. Don't freak out, because I'll tell you what, HR is one of my number one offenders of clicking on stuff, because they get all the resumes and they get the W-2s and all that stuff. So they're just downloading stuff all day long. So HR and finance, I'm sorry, if you're in HR and finance, you guys need to be careful. But anyway, keeping going here, right? So I like this screen, right? So one thing you see on the right is you can see this particular company's testing. We can see it getting better. We can see how many users clicked on it, how many opened the attachment, how many replied, how many put their credentials in. We can see all the way down, and we can see that over time we're getting better, that our testing is working. That's important because a lot of these phishing tools have different types of tests, and we may just need to tweak the test. We may need to send a different type of campaign or different type of training, and we can even drill down to the actual user. We can see that Betty is not getting it. Maybe we need to have some one-on time with Betty or Jim or whoever, right? We can tell if it's a particular person. This particular company we also like to use can put us against the industry. So we can select specific industries in a lot of cases and company size and see how we do against them, right? To see if we're doing better or worse than the industry. Not that says, oh, we're better than the industry, we need to stop worrying about this. No, but I feel like it is a good place to start to compare yourself, because without comparing, we don't know how we're doing. Reporting. We've kind of talked about a little, at least about how we need to use the reports to tweak our training, but I feel like it's even more than that, right? A lot of these tools in security up until now, it's been okay to install antivirus and say, I have antivirus, I'm fine. Well, the more modern tools will have in-depth reporting in showing you how you're doing, right? And, I'm not going to go into detail of these these reports should guide you down your training path. They should guide you to say, our training is working, our training isn't working, or, in this specific tool, it can focus by group and say, oh, the accounting team is doing great, and maybe the engineering team isn't doing good, or the nurses aren't doing good. And when you can focus our energy to where it helps the most, and that's what I like. I like to be able to focus it, because time is money. All this has a cost hidden or not. So this is where it begins with these tools, right? Most of them have a list of different samples that you can use, or like templates, and you can kind of customize that template to ideally match your industry, to match, like this one here, you can see they got banking, business, CPA. These templates will be focused to those industries to try to trick your employees. And yes, we're trying to trick them, because that's what the bad guys are doing all day long. You can kind of see a couple of examples here. I don't know how familiar you guys are with this, but play a voicemail. I get these all the time. I'll get random emails saying, click here to play this voicemail, but I know my voicemail solution looks nothing like that. Why would I click on this? I don't know what you are. I need to delete this email. Behind here, you can see a little finance one, right? Where, they're trying to get somebody to do some money transfers, and they will be as tricky to set up your domain with an extra character or or a zero instead of an O, right? It's just, it goes on and on. So there's things you need to do, and there's definitely steps that can be taken. But this is kind of what's going on the back end. We have to select these templates, customize them, we try not to be the same every time. We want to change it up. We got to keep people kind of aware of what they're doing so that they stay on their toes.
How often are these lists updated?
I mean, the different solutions out there I've seen, some of them are very archaic, to be honest. I recommend before anyone signs up with any type of phishing tool, they need to get a demo and look at the data, because they'll show you this cool what they can do. But the one we use, they update it. I think I see new templates every 2 weeks or so, because they try to be, like right now they have stuff for COVID inside the tool we use. It's literally COVID specific for hospital and medical, because it's a current thing, people are clicking on it, right? So, in the CPA industry, they'll have stuff about taxes and stuff like that, trying to use the current situation to get into your network. And it's that complicated. It's not as generic as everybody wants to think it to be. They will be tactical. What we've seen some people do, they will get access to a particular user's email, and they will sit there and just watch. They will watch how you talk to each other. They will figure out who has control of the money, and then they will fish that person like the other person. And they will try to get a conversation started, and then they'll try to get you to do something that you would normally do. And so they literally watch you. So you have to really be vigilant to make sure that not a person you normally email may not be that person, right? They may create a new email that's a slightly different. And if you're not paying attention, you might not be emailing who you think you are. They will hang out, and it's very important to kind of watch for that.
Do these get that specific?
They can. You can customize them all the way down to changing names and to make it sound like your company. So if you don't call, if in your business, if it's HR who does payroll, you can make it so the email says, "Hey, HR needs you to give us your bank account," right? They do get that specific. They don't have the ability to mask, you could pretend it's an employee if you wanted to fish accounting, right, or something. I wouldn't recommend it. It would get caught pretty quick. But you can do it. You can customize these templates your own. You can put your own logo in there if you wanted to try to trick them even more. So not all of the phishing tools out there are that way, but the one we use KnowBe4. Go ahead and tell you now. It's not as easy. It's not as easy as just buying it. It definitely takes someone to administrate it. So I'd recommend be cautious if you're trying to go off on your own and do it without help. It does require quite a bit of setup. It has to be integrated into your network to automatically do it too. And that's one of my other tips. I don't think I have it on any slide. The more automated this tool can be, the better. So pulling a list of users, having things set up so anytime a new user is added, it automatically assigns training to them, things like that. Super nice. You've got to make this stuff just kind of a repetitive engine that just kind of flows without having to be manually tweaked. So
you said something earlier, and I just wanted to clarify that you said something about how they get into your system, but these types of products, they don't actually get into your system, do they?
No, everything that's in these only reports back to them and doesn't collect any data. They're not in your system. No, they're just reporting back to them that you did something. We'll talk about later about USB drops. I'll just say nothing is done to your system. They literally are just saying, "Oh, he clicked on it. Oh, he entered his credentials." They don't do anything with that. These are the good guys. They're just letting you know that your employees need help. This is an example of what happens if you fail, at least with KnowBe4. And I like mixing up with immediate response and unimmediate. The negative to immediate response is now John's going to go to everybody in engineering saying, "Hey, we're getting a phishing test. Don't click on it," right? So it's kind of a good and positive to mix up immediate failures with non-immediate failures, or not with non. So they can do it two ways. They can do it where you get this pop-up saying, "Hey, this is how you failed and how you don't fail again." As you can see here on the right, they're explaining to this user what they missed in the email, how to know it was a phish. Or it has the ability to do nothing. So the user just thinks, "Huh, that was weird. It went away." That way they don't alert the other users. And we like to mix it up. You got to keep people on your toes, and we want to get as much data as we can. So Anyway, yeah, we even have the ability to not do anything, and then a week later they get an email, hey, by the way, you clicked on this and now you've been assigned training. And then we let the HR have a portal where they can log in and keep a tab on everybody's training to make sure they're doing it. So yeah, it's pretty cool. One of the last things I wanted to talk about is the types of phishing. A lot of people focus only on email, and it's not. That's kind of actually old school. We're seeing more and more of this old stuff, of this new stuff, where they'll call up, hey, this is Whit from IT. I need you to go to this website and get me in your computer so I can download an update. And they'll try to get in, right? They'll try to get in, and that's as simple as training a user. Well, I can't do that without a ticket. Do you have a ticket number, or can I call you back? Or we have some users that let us set up two-factor to where we have to give them a special code to prove we are who we are. And it doesn't all cost money, but it all takes some time in getting it set up, right? SMS or text, that's kind of a new and upcoming. Hey, this is so-and-so IT, click on this and get me in your computer, please, or your phone. I need your password. They'll do anything, right? One type of phishing is what's called DNS redirection, and that's where you got farming, where when they get inside your server and they may not be able to get anything serious, but they'll just redirect your domain to a different site. I had a customer recently that their hosting provider had a glitch in their system where their entire website got redirected to somebody else, and that they had to do an update and patch and all that because they had this type of attack where they just redirected their site to something else. And sometimes those sites look like the good site, just trying to get you to click on something and download it, right? USB drop attacks. These are actually one of the funnest ones. They don't really work over and over again well, but what it is we can either mail to your office or literally drop USBs on desks, and as soon as they're plugged into a computer, we get it. You get alerted. Oh, John on this computer plugged in the USB, because that USB could have bad stuff on it. You shouldn't plug a USB in. You don't know where it came from. The right action would be take it to IT. They can securely plug it in, erase it, put it to use. If you don't know where it came from, don't use it. I recommend that people issue USBs to their employees with serial numbers on them so that they know, hey, I know this USB. It's got our logo on it. It's, got to make it harder. That's not perfect because obviously it can be copied, but you got to do things. And really, why are you using USBs? They're pretty old school.
Yeah, give me an example of why someone would plug in a USB.
People will plug anything into their computer. They
Actually,
really will.
I really wanted you to tell a story about how we were at an IT conference, and that's they did a hacking demonstration, and the way that they did it was leave out marketing USBs, and they hacked into the people that plugged them in, and it was a large majority of this IT conference that did it.
Yeah, it was literally, we're at an IT conference, and one of the give outs was USBs or some kind of charger. It's not always a USB. They can even inject into a charge cord malicious hardware or software. So you think, oh, I've just got a charge cord. I'm going to plug that into my laptop and charge my cell phone. Oh, look, my cell phone charged. You think everything's fine. In this whole time, they're penetrating your network and they've got access, and you're giving them all the, everything they want, right? So it's a real thing. You definitely got to. Physical social engineering. This is one of the more hardcore ones, but I like it. It's definitely something, a food for thought. Most of our offices, if somebody just walked in, said, hey, I'm with IT, can I work on your computer? Most people would just let that person sit down and start working on the computer. You need to challenge that. You need to say, well, I don't have a ticket open. Why are you here? Call someone, verify that person needs to be there. We each in our court, we try not to go on site unless we're coming. Challenge your IT. They should notify. It needs to be scheduled so the person knows the person's supposed to arrive. There's so many different ways that, people will try to phish you, and physically getting into your network is definitely one of them. I see a lot of this in hospitals because hospitals will have, 80 vendors in there, and they'll just let people in. And sometimes the departments will just, they don't know that it's not good or bad. They just let a person come in there and sit down. I'm like, you didn't check anything. You just let this guy have access. So yeah, it's definitely a thing to be concerned with. It's, one of the next steps. So.
What in our offering or in a usual offering for phishing comes, do they do physical social engineering?
No, that's normally by request. The normal is kind of the email, phone, and USB. That's kind of the standard. Those are the most popular vectors for sure.
One of the questions that got asked was, is it fair to say that a piece of equipment doesn't get hacked? It's the person that gets hacked.
Well, I would say that 90 something percent of the time, that's what's true, right? I mean, you still can have vulnerabilities in your network and misconfigured stuff, which is the person doing it to the device, right? That let people in. And you can have a device that hasn't been patched, right? But that patch is due to a person's flaw in coding, right? So you could say that's still the person. So it kind of depends on how wide you're describing the person, but I get what you're saying. I feel like, yes, the person is the vulnerability, not necessarily the equipment.
Yeah, I feel like in our experience, the good guys are getting just as good as the bad guys, right? And so in the back in the day, it used to be that people would come in, through ports. And now a good IT company will understand how to lock down ports and to make it secure. That's part of the geo filtering and things like that they can, and the devices have gotten better. So those types of hacks have decreased a lot, and now it's this component. I also think that the other part that Whit brought up in the pyramid is that there's a lot of things that we can do, like the dark web and all that kind of stuff, but the ultimate, the one that would affect all of those other ways that people get in is actually through phishing and security awareness training. And there is phishing. We talked a lot about phishing training, but there is an element of security awareness training too. That goes to like password policies and stuff like that we haven't really even discussed in this. But having people aware of what they're doing, how they can make themselves a more difficult target, are definitely things that can encompass multiple layers, that can impact multiple layers of this.
Yeah, when you hear the FBI had a data breach, or Walgreens or Target had a data breach, they have this entire triangle and some, right? So in big business, I guess what I'm trying to get at is had this entire triangle and some for years. It's not perfect, but it adds layers. It makes you a harder target. The bad guys have learned that they can go after these small businesses and within days or hours gain access, find something that's of value and exploit it. And it's easier because we don't have these tools. So they going after all these small businesses and small hospitals and small government because they don't have the tools. So that's where it's coming from, right? So, and at least now these tools are available to small business. Back in the day, your big corporations would write their own or have their own teams. But now, within a matter of hours, I can give normal business a full-blown security package that makes them dang well locked up. I foresee that insurance companies in the future are going to start saying, all right, what levels do you have of security? Okay, you only have antivirus and backup, but your rate's going to be X, or they're not even going to insure you unless you have, XYZ added on, because the risk is just becoming so great. Anyway. Cool. I think that was our last slide. Let me go back to it here. Yep. So a reminder, we have another webinar, and I'm going to tie this webinar into that one by saying, look, IT budgeting, right? Everybody's like, oh, spend so much in IT, how am I going to afford spending more on IT? I really want to break that down, and I really want to talk about what's more expensive, buying a new server or buying some antivirus or phishing training, or dealing with the repercussions of having a situation or the chaos of a server going down. What's more expensive? And really truly taking that comment that IT is so expensive. Well, there's statistics out there and there's numbers and guidelines. Do you feel like you're spending too much IT, or are you really not? And you need to be spending more. And I'm a big person of looking at industries and saying, okay, the industry on average is spending X, we're spending Y. Okay, so maybe what do we need to do to write that? Being within the normals where you want to be when it comes to stuff. I will say that some businesses that are high technical or high risk might be need to be higher spend. I don't want to give away too much information because then we won't have the next webinar, but there's a lot of cool stuff out there. You don't have to guess at this stuff. There's industry standards, and we just set ourselves up inside of those, write out the budget, get the plan. And if we're not spending enough, look, boss, we're not spending enough. Look, these are other businesses similar to ours. They're spending X. I'd like to get these few things to get us more in line with, kind of what our peers are doing. So anyway, yeah.
If anybody has any questions, please feel free to drop them now. We will be having the next webinar. And if you're not already getting my newsletter, then then please call us, ask up for the newsletter, because we'll be following up with this webinar with also some extra points in the next newsletter about different items that go alongside this, and just that information again in a written form about why we're really encouraging people to consider this type of training and this stuff right now, specifically, that there is an immediate need to get these products moving forward within your company.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. With phishing training, the ROI is pretty quick. You can see quickly your users not clicking on phishing emails as much. You can quickly see it having an impact. And that's really exciting for me to be able to have such a quick change and transform people's business. It's great. It's really, things are getting better. The tools are getting better reporting. It's good times for security. So great.
Thank you guys for coming so much. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns that you think about afterwards, make sure that you email us. You can see there our website, but if you don't have one of our emails, there you can find the first step at hctechguys.com. That's on our website that we can that we reply to. Anyway, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you later.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.